Hey everybody, it is November 9th, 2025, and I wanted to take this time to make a video. I did a thread on X, and I wanted to talk a little bit about overcoming a losing streak. This past October, I actually did have, at one point, it was a 12 trade losing streak, but Rocket Lab was opened on October 2nd, and so once I had closed that trade out just a handful of days ago, that did kind of squeeze in there. So I did have a 11 trade in a row losing streak. So just kind of wanted to go through that, really go through kind of some of the month and the trades that I took. And then obviously you can see here, looking at an MP or Open Door. I'm not going to cover all of these. Some of these were fairly small losses, but GEV, MSTR, Rigetti, Coreweave, Rigetti again, Open Door again, GEV, AVGO and SQQQ. Just to kind of talk about those, and really not even just those, some other things that I did on the month. It's funny because the name that probably kicked my ass the most in October was SNDK, trying to short it, but ultimately really with no luck whatsoever. So just kind of wanted to talk about overcoming a losing streak, how the month ended up finishing out, some of the trades that I took. I won't cover all of them, otherwise we might be here a little bit too long. But yeah, I think that it's such an important topic to talk about, because I feel like when people go on losing streaks, 5 trades in a row, 7 trades in a row, 10 trades in a row, one of the worst habits that I see a lot of traders that I talk to do is they'll start to size their trades up, right? They'll start to, and I'm the exact opposite. So usually when the market is coming off of a correction is when I like to get, into my 10% plus positions, meaning 10% of my portfolio in a stock. When I'm trading poorly or the market has gotten a little bit more extended, right, I like to size things down, 5% positions, and then add to my winning positions as they're winning. I never, one of the things you guys will rarely ever see me do is add to a losing position. That is just effectively, you're already wrong and you're trying to correct that mistake by getting more aggressive when either the market isn't confirming what you thought was going to happen, and price is obviously not confirming what you thought was going to happen, or either you're just not seeing something well, right? Similar to me talking about SNDK, I've tried that short, a handful of times, but never have I gotten overly aggressive on the position because I want to be right. And what I don't want to do is lose money. And if I'm not seeing the stock well and I keep trying to do something and it's not working and I short it and I short it and I short it, and none of the times it's working, I don't go back and say SNDK owes me money, now I'm going to go 20% of my portfolio on this one trade to make my money back. Right? What you guys will notice when we go through some of the month is I can have a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15 losers in a row, at some point in my career. But once, the tide turns in my favor and I'm seeing things well and I'm doing things well and I'm aligned with the market as it's doing what it's doing and rewarding, whether it be longing or shorting, then all of a sudden, the tides can really turn quickly and I can make up for a lot of paper cuts along the way. So with that said, let's just kind of start to dive in through some of these names. I do have some other trades, like I said, that I didn't go through that, maybe I'll bring up, right at the end. We'll talk about a few more of those that I didn't really kind of include in this little slide deck. But anyway, just bear with me and let's start to get through some of these names. So Rocket Lab was the first name that I bought, and the first time that I actually bought Rocket Lab was on October 1st, and I tried to buy it effectively as a bounce from the 50 simple moving average, or as it was going back through the 20, holding the 50 simple moving average, but we closed very, very weak by the end of the day. So not something that I was comfortable at all holding when I had bought it, a little bit higher. You never really know what's going to happen overnight. And, bought this thing effectively as a 5-minute opening range break and stop effectively towards the end of the day, when you were cracking kind of hard. So, it ended up stopping me out. I ended up rebuying it on October 2nd as it was taking out effectively, trying to go back through the pivot and prior day high. And then this one ended up working a little bit better. I did end up trimming some off into that left side peak. It really was the next day into a little bit of weakness. And then when I realized, okay, we're trying to break out, I put some back on. And then the following day, I trimmed some off into strength. And then ultimately, as we got extended from the 50 simple moving average, and this is kind of why I, always like to take some off into extensions from the 50 SMA. This one ended up working pretty well on trims, 67 and then $70 plus. And then ultimately a few days ago on the close below the 20 simple, I let this thing go. And had I still been holding on to it, the last of my gains would have been round trip. So ultimately, it was good that I got myself out of that one. ALAB was another one that I bought. I bought this one as a hold and bounce off the 50 simple moving average. Again, October 1st. And then it was going into, so Wednesday, fine. You take your entry. I think it was like reclaiming VWAP, like $195. And then the next day, it's, holding in there pretty well. And I'm like, well, this is great. Nice gap up, nice job pushing. And then on Friday, I take a little bit off the table. It's day 3 from the day when I bought it. And then it started to close very, very weak going into the weekend. And that was kind of my cue, to hit the exit. GEV, I've tried this one actually a couple times. I tried this as a hold of $600. And then, we got stopped out a couple of days later on a break of that low. And then I tried it again on October 3rd as a reclaim of $600, and then only for that one to fail as well. The thing with GEV was I already knew it was a little bit of a slower mover. I knew I had been building this really, really long base. And kind of the thinking in my head was, if this thing is going to go to 700, 750, 800, we've been going sideways for this really long amount of time. I don't have to get aggressive in this thing at all. 5% position. And a 5% position effectively, if you're wrong, and you're risking, I think my risk was like 3% in some spots, 4%, what have you. And even less, you're really risking nothing, like fractions of a percent of your portfolio. And so my thinking was, I'm going to go ahead and let me see if I can actually find my first bit of GEV execution here. Effectively risking 1.6% in terms of risk on a 5% position. I mean, we're really talking about nothing. 1.7% risk on the first trade that I took, 1.6% risk on the second trade that I took with roughly 5% positions. I mean, we're really talking about very, very small damage done if you're not right. And then adding to the position if I was going to be proven right, another higher low, a break through that 620 pivot, a break through that 660 pivot, etc. And that never really happened. So, no big deal. I'm okay trying, these like effectively undercut and rallies. Often they're some of the spots that provide, some of the lowest risk. Now they have a higher fail rate, but they provide really, really low risks where you can get multiples of your money in case you are proven right. Moving forward, MP. This one was a little bit frustrating. I bought this one on October 2nd, excuse me. And I was buying this as a 50 simple moving average reclaim. And of course, middle of the morning, I get stopped out at the lows of the day, and then only to see this thing close really, really well. I had a nice trade on it in September, so this name's kind of just been on my radar. But ultimately, this one ended up failing quite hard, even though it did give a nice little multi-day push there. Rigetti. Boy, I have tried this one quite a bit, and Rigetti actually on October 2nd or October 7th ended up being my biggest loser of the month. I tried this one on the 7th with stops on the 8th, and then I tried this one again on the 8th as well, as I thought it was failing. I kept trying it as like a first red day setup, and then some ads on the 10th, only to then get stopped out on the 13th, and then even a little bit higher. I thought, again, first red day setup on the 6th, and then stopped out that same afternoon. So, you know, a little bit of a pain in the butt to deal with this one, and it did end up being, you know, my biggest loss of the month, but ultimately still a pretty manageable loss nonetheless. So not too much of a big deal there. AVGO, I tried buying this one effectively as a low cheat setup on the 10th. We all probably remember what happened on the 10th. The market had like a 3% plus down day. Trump talked about the tariffs with China. I tried to buy this as a reclaim of and a low cheat setup going over October 2nd's high. And then ultimately, just 30 minutes, 40 minutes after I bought this thing, it felt like this thing was rolling over and I was getting stopped out. So a little bit of a pain in the butt, but it is what it is. When I got stopped out of AVGO, I started to get long SQQQ. And boy, did it close great. I was like, oh, this is awesome. I've got Rocket Lab open. I've got a nice Tesla position open. And, I've got my ARC open. And so I've got a bunch of longs. And I'm like, okay, if this thing is going to get worse from here, it'll be nice to at least have SQQQ. I could figure out what the hell to do next, and my equity curve's not really dropping. It's just like I've got SQQQ making up for some of what's going on in Tesla, making up for some of what's going on in Rocket Lab and ARC, etc. So that was just kind of my thinking at the time. And then SQQQ just really flirted with my, I think it was like 15 average, if I'm not mistaken, and it just kind of flirted with that spot, and I'll kind of confirm here really quickly. SQQQ, yeah, 15.12 is what I had as an average, and all it really did was just kind of flirt with that spot for days and days and days. I was like, okay, my longs are popping right back up, and I'm going red on SQQQ, and oh, my longs are maybe consolidating some more, and here goes SQQQ, and all it really did was a bunch of nothing. And then I just kind of took a little bit off as a stop at flat, and then the rest of it when it took out that 10-10 low. So, really, it kind of served its purpose. It allowed me to really stay comfortable in my longs, which are names that I wanted to hold for longer. And then ultimately, SQQQ kind of rolled back off to those lows. And equity curve effectively stayed near highs, which is the important part. Moving forward, UAMY, this one was one of the bigger trades that I had on the month. Now, this one was going absolutely parabolic. If you kind of look at this one had like multiple, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 6 gap ups, really, really big ramping volume into that. And then you had like MP also really moving, CRML really moving. You had like USAR go from like 20 to like 40s plus in a really, really short amount of time. You had like these other speculative names like ABAC going. You had obviously the nuclear names going, the quantum names going. So it's like there was like spec money flying all over the place. But this one was actually a fairly easy short. I shorted it right at the opening print, basically. I tried to at least. And then it was like kind of like a break of like a little pre-market little level. So 18.5, and then washed out for a little bit, and then tried to rebound, and then got nice and tight, and then as soon as it started to roll back over, I reshorted it. It was a beautiful, beautiful short. I got some covers off at 13, at 12, and in the back of my mind, I was like, man, this thing can go to like 7. And then like one of the days, and I can confirm the date here with UAMY. It started to take out a prior day high at like $13. Yeah, like 13.04 on 10/22. It started to take out prior day high, and I was just like, you know what? I was like, let me just get rid of it. And then of course it just went sideways 2 more days, got nice. It was very frustrating because I covered it, and then the next day it was lower, and I was just like, I knew it. And then the next day it was super tight, and I was just like, oh my God. I was like, this thing looks like it's gonna break down. And then it gaps down over the weekend. And then we go for that second leg, like $6 lower than where I covered it. This one could have very well been one of my biggest trades of the year. Again, speaking in hindsight, if I like just hold my 18s plus and then just ride that sucker down to 6, and then you catch that kind of a move. But ultimately, not a whole lot that I can do there. So, but UAMY was like a 6% position. So it's like one of those where, I'm really always focused on my risk first, regardless of the setup that I might be trading. It could be a bounce off the 50-day, it could be a breakout, it could be a high volume close, it could be whatever the setup is that I might be trading. I'm always focused on position sizing. I'm okay adding to winning positions. I'm never really okay adding to losing positions. And ultimately, it takes one UAMY or a few of these others that I'll show you to like really make up for the bad streak that you're having. You could be trading god awful, but what most traders tend to do is they want to make their money back. And part of the problem is when I'm trading poorly, I size down. Right? The market has to invite me in no matter the side of the market that I'm trading on. If I'm like, the market's going down, I'm quote unquote bearish, right? Well, are there bearish setups? Are they really following through? And if so, am I catching a couple? And then if I'm catching a couple, am I then getting into one and then it's working and getting into another and it's working and getting into another and it's working? If that's what's happening, then I continue with that side of the market and I can quickly make back progress, right? Because now I'm getting more money to work behind seeing things well and not being a genius, the market being friendly to the side of the market that I'm trading. So that's like one of the most important concepts that I think so many traders just look past. They aren't seeing things well, they take a big loss, and then they try to get that money back by taking even more aggressive size on another trade, which is just a no-no. That is how you bury yourself. And then you just like mentally and psychologically destroyed moving forward. Rigetti, right basically on the back of UAMY. I shorted this thing on the 15th, effectively right near those highs. And just to quadruple check, but I'm almost positive that this is correct. Let me just make sure. Don't want to give you guys any. So Rigetti, yeah. So on the 15th, again, at this point, UAMY, your ABAT, your MP. Now, I didn't know that MP was going to go do what it was going to go do, but you can kind of start to see some of the speculative money coming off the table. So Rigetti, I get 2 little ads during the day. Basically, by middle of the afternoon, we're getting a nice little washout towards the 5-day. Trust me, I had gotten my butt kicked enough on Rigetti for me to be like, hey, you know what? We're coming into the 5 simple moving average. Let me go ahead and take some off the table. Took a third of my position off of the table at 51. Of course, it rebounded, but the next day it was never able to take out highs. And then from there, it was just a matter of being patient. And I got some really, really nice covers off sub 40 and then as low as 35 bucks. So that was nice. And then my thinking was we're going to get a rebound and then we're going to get like a 3 to 5 day rebound. And then maybe I can go look for them on the short side there. So it's one that, you get a big move down, even like IONQ from like 80s to 50s. That's a pretty big move down. And so that was kind of my thinking, just get your money off the table. A lot of these spec names, whether it was rare earths or nuclear or quantum, they had already taken a pretty big spill. So, just kind of, enjoy the fade, let it rebound, let it start to reject, let it start to build a range, and then I can kind of come back into these names down the road. Coreweave, I traded this one like a total asshole. I was trying to buy it effectively as a 142 breakout right over prior day high. Okay, fine, I got positioned in it well. It did not work, no big deal. But I have kind of a rule, and I violated it on this trade. And my rule is typically, let's just say for the sake of discussion, a stock moves 4% per day. I do not like to buy a stock if it has now moved the entirety of its average daily range or more when I go to buy it. And the reason is because now I can't effectively get cushion on my position by day end because it has already moved the entirety of its average daily range when I go to get in. Well, I'm a little frustrated. I got stopped out of Coreweave and literally bottom ticked the damn thing right at prior day low, which is really where I should have been buying an undercut and rally, but I bought the breakout. I stop out at low of day instead of buying the low of day, undercut and rally. And then all of a sudden, it's on the back of news of Oracle, and I don't remember what the hell the news was for Oracle, but this thing starts squeezing. I'm like, shit, it's back through prior day high, it's getting back through intraday highs. I'm in there. Then all of a sudden you get a big failure. I'm like, I'm a schmuck. Like, I shouldn't have bought that. So I just took and now the nice part was I'd already taken a loss on it, so I sized down my second trade even more. But I didn't even bother to wait for low of day to hit. I was just like, you're an idiot. You shouldn't have been in this. It's not following through. It's failing, and just getting out of it. Trust me. The best thing I did was size it down the second time that I took it because I knew I was chasing. The worst thing I did was even getting back in because I have a firm rule that I just do not like to buy stocks when they have moved more than their average daily range. Lesson learned. NUGT, this one was actually the biggest trade of the month. This one was a short on the 16th. And before we had our government shutdown, I knew that gold was very, very crowded positioning. And we started to get very extended with NUGT, with gold. And so I took a short, 185 bucks. I think it was just a little bit under, like 183 if I'm not mistaken. And I was giving it a 5% stop, basically. So it was like to 195. And of course, I didn't nail my short, but I had sub 10% position. The very next day, just a super unwind. The day after that, a nice tight inside day on the 20th, and that's where I got to add. And then the gap down on the 21st and a washout, took some off the table. The bounce off the 50 simple moving average on the 22nd was where I got out completely. It was never even a 10% position. And again, it just goes to show you the power of actually keeping your stops tight, being on the side of the market, which is working. And at this point, I had started to gain some nice traction on the short side. And NUGT was an absolute beauty. I really couldn't ask for a whole lot more. You get like a fade on NUGT from like I want to say like I had like a 180s effectively average, just a little bit below that. And then you get a fade for about 50 points from the entry in just a short amount of time. You really can't ask for too much more. And it's one of the trades that effectively made the month. NUGT, UAMY, Rigetti, what were like the three best that I had this month. And you don't need a ton of them to like really, really make your month. SNDK, like I said, I've been trading this one like a total ass. Short this one as well on the 22nd and tried to add to the winner, only to get squeezed out the very next day on the 23rd. And then I did it again where I took some on the 23rd, and then I added a little bit more, this would have been on the 22nd, added some. Let me just triple check. I want to make sure I'm not giving you guys, just let me make sure that I'm looking at this one correctly. SNDK. Okay, so this one would have been entries on the 20th and entries on and ads on the 21st as I was being proven right, and then again stopped out on the 22nd. And then 22nd, after I'd gotten stopped out, I shorted it again on what I thought was failing, and then on the 23rd, you know how it goes. So I tried this one literally on the 20th, ads on the 21st, stopped out on the 22nd, re-added on the 22nd, stopped out on the 23rd. What I did wrong was not giving as much credence to how much strength WDC, MU, STX have had when I need to be focused on groups. I talk about this all the time, group. You need to be focused on it. Didn't do a good enough job. The best thing I did was I've been keeping small size on all of these, but this thing is so damn volatile, even tiny size, it hurts when you're wrong. So it is what it is. DELL, I bought this right over the 150 pivot on the 23rd. I did a really nice job getting some sells off into this 162, 164 left side peak. I tried adding a little bit more as a 20 SMA undercut and rally, and then ultimately I closed it when we closed below the 20 simple moving average. Pretty much nothing burger of a trade. Oracle, I bought as a hold of the 50 simple moving average on the 23rd. We had a really nice rebound on the 22nd with names like Hood and Palantir and NBIS and Coreweave. So on the 23rd, I'm like, well, if Oracle's going to hold the 50, let's go. So I buy Oracle. It's working great. Then all of a sudden, the market's still ripping. And on the 27th and on the 28th, these things finished red when the market was bright green. That is relative weakness I just do not stand for. You got to get rid of that crap in your portfolio. Very, very happy that I did. And ultimately, a really nice fade on Oracle, and very glad that I ended up taking my money off the table. Mags, I bought as a breakout on the 24th. I thought over this 65 level looked great. I had a 10% position in here because it is so damn slow. I actually wanted more because I didn't think like any mega caps actually looked great. I just noticed that they were strong and they looked like they wanted to go higher. So, okay, fine. Let's just get long. Mags, because IGV also looks great. You get a nice push. I take some off onto day 3, and then I round trip the rest of the gains. Not a lot that I can do about that. I wanted to be patient, but it's such a slow mover. There's nothing to be done. MP, I bought this thing as a bounce from the 50 simple moving average on what I thought was going to be a 50 simple moving average undercut and rally in the 70s. And then there was some rare earth news between China and the US, it seemed like, over the weekend. And then this one, gapped down a little bit more than I was hoping for because my stop would have been low of day, kind of gapped below that, and I just had to eat a little bit bigger of a loss than I was hoping for. IREN, this one was a bit of a dodged bullet, so I was shorting this thing, and this one reminded me a little bit of AEVA back in July. Probably good one to look at. You lose about 30%. You bounce about 30% into about a 3-day move, and then I'm kind of looking for this thing to stay heavy and eventually roll over. What ends up happening is I'm getting short, I'm adding some more, and then they get that Microsoft deal over the weekend, and then this thing gaps up all the way to north of 74.15. When we open up in pre-market, I am using that 74.15, that left side peak, and if I wasn't short there, that is the level that I would have shorted at. But I was already short, so that was kind of the key level that I was looking at, being this left side peak. 5-minute opening range break, we're under that 74.15 level, and I just let it work. With the grace of God, this thing just faded. Most of the day, I did as best of a job covering my loser as I absolutely could. This was like the second biggest loser of the month for me, but boy, it was a heck of a lot bigger. I was up like 200K on it. And at one point down 300 on it. So, that kind of fluctuation just flipped my stomach just a little bit. But, it is what it is, and ultimately a pretty nice fade so that I saved myself any bigger of a headache. OKLO, this one I still have. I thought this is a beautiful left shoulder, head, right shoulder. Tried to reclaim the 20 simple moving average, and then you fail, and then I start getting short. And I had a short there at like 143 with like a 145 stop. That stop got hit during the trading day, ripped all the way to 152, started to come off. I reshorted it 146, added the next day 142. Then I covered some at $126 about 4 days after my original short. And then I covered some more on Friday into the washout sub 100. As soon as you started to creep back up, going towards 100. I got some more off the table, and I'm down to about 30% left on my position. But ultimately, this is a pretty nice trade. And the stats for the month, we had 38 total trades. We closed 37 of them. OKLO is the only open trade. 9 wins, 28 losses, bright green month. Biggest gain was NUGT. Biggest loss was Rigetti. Again, 25%. Sub 25% win rate. Average hold time on the winners 10 days. Average hold time on the losers 2 days. And my biggest losing streak of the year at 11 trades. So, just food for thought. You do not have to have some insane win rate to make good money. That's just pretty important to remember. You just have to focus on proper position sizing things up when you're right, not really sizing things up, but you should be comfortable adding to winners when you're right, keeping losses super tight, knowing where you're going to leave in case you're wrong. These are all the trades that I took on the month. You know, there's a total here, but that's also including OKLO, which isn't on the realized side yet until this trade is completely closed. But ultimately, you know, it was a pretty good month with lots of red. So that's just something to remember. You don't have to be right all the time to still make a ton of money as a swing trader. I think that that's like a misconception. And, you know, when you are a day trader, you know, you tend to take your money a little too quickly off the table, which fine. You know, every strategy to each their own. I prefer to be wrong more often than I am right because the stock market is a very, very unpredictable place. And I don't want to have to try and be right all the time in order to make money. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. There is a thread that kind of went with this on X if you're watching this on YouTube or vice versa or in the Discord. Hopefully there is a ton to learn from here. One of the things being size positions properly. If you do that and then you let your winners work, make sure those winners are what take care of the losses and then some, right? It was like 3 trades this month for me, not counting OKLO, UAMY, Rigetti, and NUGT that took care of all of my losses. That 12, really 11 losing streak, the 11 trade losing streak was taken care of by just 1 trade. So forget about the dollar amount. Think about things in terms of percentage. Think about things in terms of sizing in properly. And make sure you're letting your winners work when you have them. Anyway, appreciate you guys, and I will see you guys bright and early for pre-market prep, or I'll see you guys in the room tomorrow. Cheers.